Hello everyone, in this video we are going to apply paddings and margins to our web page. And in the previous video we have discussed about the box model, which includes every term related to the box model. Like we have seen the paddings, margins and borders, how will be the space will be allocated within a box model. Okay, for a particular element we have seen how the paddings and the margins will be applied theoretically in the previous video, and in this video I gonna apply those things to our web page by practically. And without wasting time, let me proceed further into the topic. At first I am opening our general CSS file in a Visual Studio Code Editor. I will make the output file and the code file together for your simplicity. And this is the general thing that we made till the previous video, right? This is all the thing that we together made. And in this video we're gonna apply some paddings and the margins to our web page. Let me give you a simple example for the padding first. And if you observe this is an h1 header, right? This thing is an h1 header. If I apply some padding within the element, that means padding is nothing but a space within a particular element. If I apply some padding for this particular element on each and every side of this element, let me proceed. And if I search for this element in our markup language, okay, the thing is here, right? H1 header. Okay, for the H1 header here, okay, if I apply padding over here, right? Padding with some, I'm using 20 pixels now. The value that we are given to the padding property is the same unity value that we are already used in the font size. Okay, like 20 pixels. The unit of the padding value is pixels only. I am giving 20 pixels here. And if I give a save over here, while I am refreshing our web page, see, the padding will be applied to the each and every side of the element, right? And if you observe carefully, here the 20 pixels of the padding, here the 20 pixels, here the 20 pixels, here the 20 pixels. Okay, for this entire element the padding is applied. If I inspect this thing in our DevTools, okay, this is the DevTools of that particular picture. Okay, I will minimizing it to the downside. I am removing this. Okay, if you observe carefully, the padding is applied to the every element. If you see, the when I hover over this h1 header in our DevTools, okay, in this console, if I hover over the h1 header, you can observe the changes in our web page with, it is highlighted with a green color, right? The thing which will be highlighted by the green color in our h1 header over our general web page, that is represents the padding. Okay, 20 pixels of the padding will be applied around the element. That means this is the 20 pixels, this is the 20 pixels, this is the 20 pixels, this is the 20 pixels. Okay, when I hover over this h1 header in our console, in our element console, in our DevTools, it will be highlighted with some green color. Okay, that green color indicates the applying of padding to our particular element. And if you see the box model over here, okay, when I am dragging this, okay, if you observe carefully this box model, here the padding will be applied 20 20 20 around this particular element, and the size displaying here is the dimensions of that particular element. That means the h1 header width is 590 and the height is 62. This is the dimensions of that particular h1 element, and the padding will be applied to every side of that element, right? Here the left side is 20 and the right side is 20, top and 20 and bottom 20. Okay, this is how we have to apply padding to a particular element. Okay, and we can also make changes by applying padding to a specific thing. Like you can apply padding to the top with 20 with 25 pixels, and you can apply the same to the bottom also with some 25 pixels. Okay, I am giving a refresh. If I inspect this thing, see here, the padding will be applied to the 25 pixels to the top and bottom. But as we applying padding overallly with 20 pixels, it will be by defaultly applied to the left and right of the element. But we are changing the padding to the top and bottom with 25 pixels. Okay, if you apply padding left and right, and you can also make changes by that. Okay, I am applying padding left as 10 and padding right as 10. Okay, if I give a refresh, okay, when you see this, the left and the right side padding will be decreased to 10 pixels and the top and the bottom will be increased to 25 pixels from the 20 pixels. Okay, this is the general thing that you can apply padding to a particular element. Okay, and you have a simple trick that rather than applying padding top, padding bottom, padding left, padding right separately, you can give changes for this thing. If you give a space over here and if you include another parameter with 50 pixels, like 30 pixels, okay, when I give a save, I am refreshing it. If you see the thing here, when you give value to the padding property as 20 pixels space 30 pixels, it will taken as 20 pixels for the top and bottom and 30 pixels for the left and right. It means the first parameter value is given for the top and bottom of the element and the second parameter value is given to the left and right of a particular element. Okay, rather than including padding for the each side of the element, you can simply apply padding by using two parameters. That means the first parameter takes the top and bottom side of the padding and the second parameter takes the left and right side of the padding. This is how you can apply padding for a particular element, and you can do the same thing for the margin also. I will give you a better understanding about the padding and margins by giving those properties to our web page. And first I am removing all these unnecessary spaces which will be not useful for me. And for that, and the thing that you need to remember is this padding. Okay, the padding property is not be inherited. Okay, as we have discussed the concept of inheritance, border property is not inherited, right? And the padding and the margin property is also not get inherited into a child element. Okay, at first I am removing all the spaces, all the unnecessary spaces which will be included within the paragraphs. All the spaces I will remove by using universal selector. Okay, here we can make use of universal selector, right? In the universal selector, if I have given my margin as 0 and padding as 0, okay, this means there is no margin, no padding for the entire web page, right? The universal selector will apply the changes to the each and every element of the web page. That means when you give the margin and the padding to 0, that means there is no padding, there is no margin. If I give a refresh, see, all the things will be diminished together. That means there is no spacing, and here if you observe, and there is no numbering for the list items also, because we are removing the left padding and the left margin for the particular element. That means those properties are get removed from our page. For now I am giving my margin and the padding as 0, and we are make use of universal selector here because we can easily override the properties within the universal selector later, because universal selector has the least priority. Okay, and we can easily override these properties in the next lines of code. And if you observe carefully, I have given for my h1 header I am giving padding 20 pixel and 30 pixel, but for that one we can have the padding of 20 pixel and the 30 pixels, because what the properties that we are given to the margin and the padding here, those properties will be overridden for the h1 element. Okay, those properties will be overridden in the h1 element. Okay, if I remove this thing, I am giving a save, and if I give a refresh, see, for the h1 element also it will be removed with padding and the margin. See, this is the general thing. When I give a padding over here, okay, when I give a padding over here, and the padding values and the margin values which will be represented with 0 here, those two will be overridden here. And if I give a refresh, that means we are overriding the margin and the padding values with 20 pixels and the 30 pixels of padding. Okay, this is the general thing that we can easily override the properties of the universal selector as it has the least priority rather than all the selectors. Okay, and from now we will make use of box model and we will stylize this web page a bit more. Okay, for that, firstly I want to give space between this father of hooks and this header element. For that thing I have two choices here. The first one is I can give the margin bottom space for the entire header, right? For this entire header, if I increase the margin bottom space, the space between these two elements will be increased. Or else I can increase the margin top space for this entire thing, right? If I increase the margin top space, the space between this thing and this thing will be increased, right? For that I am taking this class color purpose bt. Okay, for this class selector, if I include something like margin bottom, right, I am including margin bottom property and I am giving 30 pixels of value. If I give a refresh, you can see the space between the two elements will be increased by using the property of margin. If I give a inspect over here, over for this element, if I take you the development tools, and in the development tools you can observe carefully when I go into the particular element like header, you can observe carefully here. See here, the bottom margin will be applied with 30 pixels of the bottom margin for this particular h1 header element, right? For this header element, the bottom margin will be increased to 30 pixels. And if you see this h1 element, that will be as it is like 20 pixels of the padding. Okay, 20 and 30 pixels of the padding. Okay, this is how we can apply margins and the paddings to a particular website. I want to give some space over here, right? For every paragraph I want to give some space. Okay, for para to para. For that, if I take p element, okay, p element selector, where it is, okay, if I take this p element selector, I can give the bottom padding, sorry, margin bottom. I can give the margin bottom as 20 pixels and I'm giving a save. If I give a refresh, see, for every para to para, the size of the distance between the paragraph to paragraph will be increased to 20 pixels, right? And for this thing also I want to give some space. For that, where is father of hooks? Okay, this is h2 element. If I give margin bottom for the h2 element like this, for example 15 pixels, if I give a refresh, the margin will be increased, and this is the general thing I just need. And if you see here, the list items will be diminished with the numbers and the bullets. That means we are not having any numbers or bullets for these list items, right? To bring back those list items, we can done the thing like within the list items I will include margin left as 30 pixels. If I give a save, refresh, see here, we are back with our numbering and the bullets of our list items. Okay, and if I want to increase the space between the list to list, in this I will include another like margin bottom with 20 pixels, right? And if I give a refresh, and you can see the changes here. Okay, for this every entire list element, it will be applied with some margin bottom, but I don't need that much space. As for now, I will decrease it to 10 pixels. I give a refresh. This is the thing that I need. And another thing that I want to include you in this video is, for example, when I give here, I have given some margin bottom as like here I am given margin bottom as 30 pixels, right? Margin bottom as 30 pixels. That means I am including this entire thing with some 30 pixels margin bottom. For example, if I given margin top for this entire element, like if I take up the markup language, within the markup language this header, right, for this color purpose class. Okay, this is the color purpose class. If I include the class over it, it will be included within this class also. For that reason I have include another class like March. For that March I will include one selector. For that selector I will include margin top. Okay, if I include some 30 pixels of space for this margin, okay, see here, the thing here is we are including the margin bottom for this entire thing, and in addition to that I am also including the margin top for this entire thing, right? If I made changes like that, if I give a refresh, there is no change, because if you inspect the thing carefully in our developer tools, see here, this is the header, right? This is the header. When I hover over this thing, this is the header, and I am minimizing it. See here, this is the header, right? For that header, if you take a look over the developer tools, the box model, the margin bottom will be applied successfully with of 30 pixels, right? And if I go for this thing, right, if I go for this entire thing and this here, if I go for this, if you see the box model, and here also it will be applied with 30 pixels of margin top. The thing here is, you might be thought that the margin bottom for the header, for this header of 30 pixel, and the margin top for this header of 30 pixels will be added upon. That means you might be thought that here the space will be increased to 60 pixels, right? By adding the 30 pixels of the margin from this header, by adding the adding of 30 pixels of margin from this header, you might be thought that those two values will be added up and we will get a 60 pixels of the margin here. But the thing here is not like that. Here it will be added with only 30 pixels. That means we are collapsing the two values. We will call it as collapsing of the margins. That means when you applied some margin property for this entire thing as margin bottom with some 30 pixels, and in addition to that we have applied the margin top for this entire thing as 30 pixels, those two values are not get added upon, because here the thing is we will get the value between those two values as the highest value. For example, if I include this thing as 100 pixels, right, 100 pixels, I am giving a save. If you see, observe carefully, it will be increased with 100 pixels here, and this entire space will be of 100 pixels of size. And you might be thought that 100 pixels plus 30 pixels, it will be increased to 130 pixels. The thing is not like that. Here the greater value between these two elements will be taken care of in this place. Okay, here the point that you need to keep in mind is, here when you apply something to our particular element, if there is any collapsing between those two elements, and the greater value between those two elements will be considered as the priority value for that particular border. This is the thing that we need to keep in mind before considering the margins and the padding values. And if you observe this thing carefully, here you will be applied with some 100 pixels of size. That means the entire thing will be applied with 100 pixels. And if I inspect this thing, okay, if I inspect this thing, and if you observe carefully here, for this also it will be applied with 30 pixels. Okay, and if you observe the orange space which will be highlighted within our box model, okay, the orange space of 30 pixels here, when I hover over this thing, if you see the orange space within our web page, that 30 pixels of the orange space will be applied to our header element with some margin bottom 30 pixels. And in addition to that, if we include this thing as 100 pixels, it will be taking the highest priority. That means this 100 pixels have this highest priority light, and it will be applied with 100 pixels because of the collapsing of the margins. Okay, we are not get the result as 130 pixels by adding upon the both the values of the 100 and the 30. Okay, we will get only the greatest values between the two values. Okay, this is the general thing about the margins and the paddings, and make utilize this resource carefully, and you can add some margins and paddings to your web page and bring you a good look for our web page. Okay, and we will catch up in the next video. Thank you.